The old cargo ship groaned as it pushed through space, its metal joints creaking with every minor course correction. Captain Jack Walker sat in his worn command chair, patting the scratched armrest like he was soothing an old horse. The bridge of the HS Perseverance was quiet, except for the constant hum of machines that should have been replaced decades ago. "Captain, we've got another warning light," Lieutenant Maria Stone called out from her station. She didn't even sound worried anymore. Warning lights had become as common as breathing on the Perseverance. "Let me guess," Walker said, running a hand through his graying hair. "The port engine's pressure valve again." He already knew the answer. That valve had been giving them trouble for the past 3 months. "No, sir. This time, it's the starboard cargo hold. Temperature's rising." Maria tapped her screen, which flickered twice before stabilizing. Even the displays were struggling to stay alive on this ship. Walker stood up and stretched. "Ben, you hearing this?" "Already on it, Cap." Chief Engineer Ben Cooper's voice crackled through the ship's ancient comm system. "Just need to bypass the secondary cooling circuit. Again, give me 5 minutes." The Perseverance was the oldest human cargo hauler still operating in this sector of space. Other captains had colorful names for it: the Flying Junkyard, Disaster Waiting to Happen, and Walker's Folly were among the more polite ones. But Walker saw something different when he looked at his ship. Where others saw patches and repairs, he saw solutions and creativity. Every jury-rigged system told a story of survival. "Incoming transmission," Maria announced. "It's the stellar Commonwealth patrol ship again." Walker sighed. "Put them through." A holographic screen appeared in front of him, showing a pristine white bridge and an equally pristine officer in a perfectly pressed uniform. "Perseverance, this is Commander White of the CSS Exemplar. Your vessel has been flagged for 17 different safety violations in the past month alone. You are ordered to proceed to Station Delta 7 for immediate inspection and probable decommissioning." Walker put on his most charming smile. "Commander, we've been through this. My ship might not be pretty, but she's got all her papers in order. We're hauling essential medical supplies to the outer colonies, and you know as well as I do that they can't afford to wait." "Captain Walker," the commander's voice dripped with disdain, "your ship is an embarrassment to human spaceflight. The Commonwealth has standards." "Which we meet," Walker interrupted. "Maybe not with the shine and polish you'd like, but we meet them. Now, unless you're planning to physically stop us from delivering medicine to sick colonists, we'll be on our way." The commander's face reddened. "This is your final warning, Walker. The next time." The transmission cut off as the Perseverance's communication system crashed again. Walker couldn't help but laugh. Sometimes his ship's problems had perfect timing. "Should I try to restore the connection?" Maria asked, already knowing the answer. "Don't bother. Let's save the power for something important." Walker settled back into his chair. "Ben, how's that cooling system coming along?" "Fixed it." Ben's voice came through clearer this time. "Used some parts from that old food synthesizer nobody liked anyway. Should hold for a while." "Good man." Walker checked their course on his personal tablet. The main navigation console had stopped working months ago. They were still on track for their delivery to New Hope Colony, even if they were moving at speeds that would make modern ships cry. The bridge crew fell into their comfortable routine, each of them monitoring their stations with the kind of attention that came from knowing their ship could fall apart at any moment. They'd been together for 5 years now, ever since Walker had bought the Perseverance with his life savings. Most people thought he was crazy to spend everything on a ship that belonged in a museum or a scrapyard, but he'd seen the potential. 3 hours later, Maria broke the peaceful silence. "Captain, you should see this." Her voice was different now, tense. Walker moved to her station, studying the news feed on her screen. The headlines made his blood run cold. "Stellar Commonwealth declares war on Earth and AL human colonies." "Get everyone to the mess hall," Walker ordered. "They need to hear this." 10 minutes later, the entire crew, all 12 of them, gathered around the mess hall's single table. The news played on multiple screens, showing Commonwealth warships moving into position around major human space stations. "They're saying we're too unpredictable," Maria read from her tablet. "That our expansion needs to be contained before we destabilize the entire galaxy. They're demanding immediate surrender of all human military forces and the placement of all colonies under Commonwealth control." "Like hell," Ben muttered, speaking for everyone. Walker studied his crew's faces. They were scared, angry, and uncertain. But they were also waiting for him to tell them what to do. He took a deep breath. "The Commonwealth thinks they know everything about us. They look at ships like ours and see nothing but junk. They see our ways of doing things as primitive and dangerous." He placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. "But that's where they're wrong. Every single one of you proves them wrong every day. We keep this ship flying with nothing but spare parts and determination. We deliver supplies to colonies that the fancy corporate ships won't touch. We solve problems in ways their computers say are impossible." He straightened up. "They want to go to war with humanity. Fine. But they're about to learn that their biggest mistake was thinking they could predict us, that they could control us, that they could judge us by their standards." "What can we do?" someone asked. "We're just one old cargo ship." Walker smiled. "We do what we've always done. We survive. We adapt. We help where we can. The Commonwealth's already written us off. They won't even bother to scrap ships like ours for their war effort. And that's going to be their second biggest mistake." "What's their first?" Maria asked. "Starting this war in the first place." Walker turned to Ben. "How many of those experimental modifications have you been wanting to try on the engines?" Ben's eyes lit up. "You mean the ones you said were too crazy to risk?" "Those exactly. Get started on them. Maria, plot a course for the New Hope colony. They'll need those medical supplies more than ever now." Walker looked around the room. "The rest of you, think about every crazy idea you've ever had for improving your stations. Every wild theory about how to make things work better. It's time to try them all." The crew dispersed with a new energy, their fear transformed into purpose. Walker stayed in the mess hall, watching the news reports. The Commonwealth's warships were beautiful, perfect machines of war. Every system optimized, every response calculated, every movement coordinated with computer precision. He thought about his own ship, with its patched hull and jury-rigged systems, about how it sometimes turned left when you told it to go right, or how the artificial gravity fluctuated if you ran the microwave, about how every day brought a new problem that required a new solution. The Commonwealth thought this would be a simple war. They thought their superior technology and perfect organization would guarantee victory. They looked at ships like the Perseverance and saw only weakness. Walker smiled as he felt his ship shudder beneath his feet, already imagining what Ben was doing to the engines. The Commonwealth was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy isn't the strongest or the most advanced. It's the one you don't think is worth worrying about. The Perseverance limped through the darkness of space, running with its power systems at minimum to avoid detection. They'd just finished delivering medical supplies to New Hope Colony, sneaking past 2 Commonwealth patrol ships in the process. Now they were deep in what used to be neutral space, following a distress signal that nobody else seemed to notice. "I still think this is a bad idea," Maria said, checking the radar for the 10th time in as many minutes. "That signal doesn't match any known emergency frequencies." "Exactly why we should check it out," Walker replied, studying the strange readings on his tablet. "Commonwealth ships are too busy with their war to investigate anything unusual." Ben's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, those engine modifications are holding steady, but I wouldn't push them too hard. We're basically running on prayers and duct tape right now." "Aren't we always?" Walker smiled. The modifications Ben had made over the past week had turned their old cargo hauler into something entirely new. The Perseverance could now change its power signature at will, making it appear as different types of ships to long-range scanners. It wasn't much, but it had kept them alive so far. The source of the distress signal finally came into view. It was a massive ship, easily 3 times the size of the Perseverance, floating dead in space. Its sleek design and pristine white hull marked it as Commonwealth technology, but something was off about it. "No damage that I can see," Maria reported. "No signs of battle or mechanical failure. It's just empty." "Running deeper scans now," Ben announced. "This is weird, Captain. The ship's putting out almost no power, but I'm getting readings that suggest its core is still active. And these designs, this isn't a normal Commonwealth vessel. The hull markings identify it as the CSS Innovator. It's some kind of research ship." Walker leaned forward in his chair. "Any signs of life?" "None," Maria confirmed. "But the internal atmosphere is still stable. We could board her if we wanted to." "If we wanted to get ourselves killed," someone muttered from the back of the bridge. Walker stood up. "Ben, Maria, you're with me. Everyone else, keep the engines hot. If anything bigger than a space rock shows up, you get out of here immediately." "That's an order." 20 minutes later, Walker led his small team through the airlock and onto the abandoned Commonwealth ship. Their magnetic boots clicked against the polished floor as they moved through the empty corridors, lights from their helmets cutting through the darkness. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, scanning every room they passed with his tools. "It's too clean, too perfect." "Not for long," Maria pointed out. "Look at the walls. There's some kind of corruption in the metal. Like it's changing somehow." Walker touched one of the walls. The surface felt wrong. Not quite solid, not quite liquid. "Ben, what are you getting from your scans?" "Something incredible," the engineer breathed. "This ship, they were experimenting with some kind of adaptive technology, something that could change its molecular structure on command. But according to these readings, it got out of control, started changing in ways they didn't expect. They found the main research lab, and Walker felt his jaw drop. The room was filled with equipment he'd never seen before, but what caught his attention was the way everything seemed to flow together. Walls merged with computers, computers merged with tools, all of it connected in ways that defied normal engineering. They were trying to create the perfect adaptive system, Maria said, reading from a still active terminal. Something that could repair itself, evolve, become stronger. But they couldn't control it. The changes became random, unpredictable. They abandoned the project because it was too chaotic. Walker picked up what looked like a small cylinder from one of the workbenches. Unlike everything else in the room, it was separate, self-contained. "What's this?" Ben scanned it. "Some kind of control module. It's still active, but it's stable. They must have figured out how to contain small amounts of the technology." "Pack it up," Walker ordered. "Everything you can carry that isn't connected to the ship. Data cores, spare parts, anything that looks useful." "Captain," Maria's voice was worried, "you're not thinking of using their abandoned tech." "That's exactly what I'm thinking." Walker helped Ben carefully disconnect several pieces of equipment. "The Commonwealth threw this away because they couldn't control it. But we're not looking for control. We're looking for chaos." They worked quickly, salvaging what they could from the research lab. As they were finishing, Ben's scanner started beeping urgently. "Captain, the ship's power core is becoming unstable. The adaptive technology is spreading into critical systems. We need to leave. Now." They ran back through the corridors, which seemed to be subtly shifting around them. Twice they had to find new routes when they found passages had sealed themselves off. They made it back to the Perseverance just as the research ship's hull began to visibly ripple. "Get us out of here," Walker ordered as soon as they were through the airlock. The Perseverance's engines roared to life, pushing them away from the doomed vessel. Through the viewport, they watched as the CSS Innovator slowly collapsed in on itself, its perfect form dissolving into a chaotic mass before exploding in a burst of energy that their sensors couldn't even categorize. Hours later, after they'd put enough distance between themselves and the debris field, Walker stood in engineering with Ben, staring at their salvaged treasures. "I can integrate some of this with our systems," Ben said, excited despite his exhaustion. "The control module especially. It won't be pretty, but when has anything on this ship ever been pretty?" Walker grinned. "Do it. Start small. Keep it contained. We'll let it adapt to us instead of trying to force it to work the way the Commonwealth wanted. You do realize this is completely insane, right?" Maria had joined them, arms crossed but eyes curious. "We're talking about using experimental technology that a highly advanced civilization gave up on because it was too dangerous." "Exactly," Walker nodded. "They gave up on it because they couldn't make it perfect. But we've never needed perfect. We just need it to work." Over the next few days, Ben carefully integrated pieces of the salvage technology into the Perseverance's systems. The changes were subtle at first. Power fluctuations stabilized themselves without any input, minor hull breaches sealed on their own, and the ship's aging computers began processing data in new and unexpected ways. "It's like the ship is learning," Ben reported, showing Walker the readings. "Every problem we encounter, every jury-rigged solution we come up with, it adapts and improves on it, but not in any way I can predict or control. It's doing things that should be impossible according to normal engineering principles." Walker watched as a crack in one of the view screens sealed itself, the material shifting and flowing until it was stronger than before. Normal engineering principles are what got the Commonwealth into this war. They think they can predict and control everything. But sometimes the best solutions come from embracing the chaos. The Perseverance shuddered slightly, its engines humming in a new tone that somehow felt right. In the darkness of space, its patched and battered hull began to shift, the salvage technology spreading through its systems like roots through soil. The Commonwealth had abandoned this research because they couldn't control it. But Walker and his crew didn't want to control it. They'd wanted to work with it, to let it grow and change in its own unpredictable way. The weakest ship in human space was about to become something entirely new, something that no Commonwealth computer could predict or understand, something that would show them the true power of human adaptability. The Commonwealth warships appeared out of hyperspace like angry wasps, their weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto the small mining colony below. The colony's 1,000 inhabitants had nowhere to run. Their few escape pods wouldn't be enough, and no ship would dare break through a Commonwealth blockade. No ship except the Perseverance. "Battle stations," Walker ordered calmly, watching the enemy fleet through their newly adaptive view screen. The screen shifted and enhanced automatically, showing him exactly what he needed to see without any input. After 3 weeks of working with the salvage technology, the entire ship had become like this: anticipating, changing, evolving. 5 heavy cruisers, Maria reported. Standard Commonwealth attack formation. They're launching fighters. How many? 30. No, 40 fighters. All latest model. She paused. They haven't spotted us yet. Walker smiled. That was another thing their ship had learned to do. The adaptive technology had spread through their hull, constantly changing its surface in ways that confused Commonwealth sensors. To their advanced targeting systems, the Perseverance barely existed. Just another piece of space debris floating at the edge of the system. "Ben, how are we looking?" "The ship's ready, Captain." Ben's voice was excited. "Those Commonwealth upgrades we salvaged from their last patrol ship have integrated beautifully. The Perseverance actually understood how to improve them. You should see what she's done with the engines." Walker nodded. That was the beauty of their situation. Every time they encountered Commonwealth technology, their ship learned from it, adapted it, and turned it into something new, something unpredictable. "All right, people. Let's show them why they should have scraped us when they had the chance." Walker tapped his chair's armrest, and the ship responded instantly, systems coming alive in ways that still amazed him. Time to save some colonists. The Perseverance moved like a ghost through space, its hull shifting colors and patterns to match the background radiation. As they approached the Commonwealth fleet, Walker could see their perfect formation. Ships placed at mathematically precise intervals, fighters moving in carefully calculated patterns. "They're starting their bombing run," Maria warned. 5 minutes until they're in range of the colony." "Perfect." Walker leaned forward. "Let's introduce some chaos into their perfect plan. Then, show them what we've learned about their own weapons." The Perseverance's newly adapted weapons came online, but not in any way the Commonwealth would recognize. Their salvage technology had merged with the ship's old systems in strange ways, creating hybrid weapons that defied conventional physics. The first shot looked like a normal plasma burst, until it split into dozens of smaller projectiles that curved and twisted through space, following paths that no computer could predict. Commonwealth fighters scattered, their formation breaking as their pilots tried to evade weapons that didn't behave according to any known rules. "Direct hits on 3 fighters," Maria reported, amazement in her voice. Their shields didn't even register the attacks. "It's like our weapons don't exist until they hit." "That's because they don't," Ben explained over the comm. "The ship's somehow phase-shifting the plasma bursts. They're literally popping in and out of normal space until impact." Walker watched as more Commonwealth fighters broke formation, confused by attacks their computers couldn't analyze or predict. The larger ships were turning now, finally registering the Perseverance as a threat. But even their advanced targeting systems couldn't get a lock on a ship that kept changing its signature. "Time to make some noise," Walker said. "Send the signal to the colony. Tell them to start their evacuation. We'll keep the Commonwealth busy." The Perseverance danced through space, moving in ways that should have torn a normal ship apart. But their hull adapted with each maneuver, strengthening where needed, becoming more flexible where required. Commonwealth weapons fire passed through empty space as their targeting computers tried and failed to predict where the ship would be. "Colony reports first wave of evacuees is away," Maria called out. "Emergency pods are launching now. Commonwealth cruisers are repositioning." Another crew member reported. "They're trying to cut off the escape routes." Walker watched the enemy ships move into their new formation. It was perfect, of course. Every position calculated to maximize coverage and minimize blind spots. But perfect wasn't always better. "Ben, remember that trick the ship learned last week? The one you said was impossible. You mean the jump drive modification?" "Captain, we haven't tested that yet. The ship came up with it on its own, and I have no idea how it works." "Sounds perfect." Walker grinned. "Do it." The Perseverance's engines howled as new energy coursed through them. The ship shuddered, and for a moment Walker thought they'd made a mistake. Then reality seemed to blur around them. They jumped, but not like a normal ship. Instead of moving through hyperspace in a straight line, they seemed to fold through multiple points in space simultaneously. The Perseverance appeared and disappeared at dozens of locations around the Commonwealth fleet, each appearance lasting just long enough to fire its impossible weapons before vanishing again. The perfect formation of Commonwealth ships dissolved into chaos. Their computers, programmed to respond to normal tactical situations, couldn't handle a threat that ignored the laws of physics. Shots meant for the Perseverance hit other Commonwealth ships instead. Fighters crashed into each other trying to dodge attacks that came from everywhere and nowhere. "Colony reports 60% evacuated," Maria said. "But the Commonwealth is launching a second wave of fighters." "Good." Walker watched as their ship's systems adapted again, learning from the battle in real time. "Let them come. The more ships they send, the more the Perseverance learns." The next 10 minutes were pure chaos. The Perseverance moved like a ghost through the battlefield, its weapons becoming stranger and more effective with each shot. Commonwealth fighters found their own systems turning against them as the adaptive technology reached out through their targeting scans, infecting their computers with its unpredictable nature. "Colony evacuation complete," Maria finally reported. All civilians are away. Walker nodded. Time to leave our mark. Ben, remember those Commonwealth missiles we salvaged? The ones the ship rebuilt? Yeah. But Captain, I still don't know exactly what they'll do. Let's find out. Target their command ship. The missiles launched, looking like standard Commonwealth weapons at first. The enemy ships ignored them, their defense systems recognizing friendly signatures. Then the missiles changed, their forms shifting and splitting like liquid metal. By the time the Commonwealth realized the threat, it was too late. The explosion wasn't like anything Walker had ever seen. It rippled through space in impossible patterns, bypassing shields and armor as if they didn't exist. When it was over, the Commonwealth command ship was still intact. But its perfect systems were corrupted, infected with the same chaos that powered the Perseverance. All ships, break off and retreat. The Commonwealth Admiral's voice crackled over all frequencies, fear evident in his tone. The target vessel is not what we thought. Repeat, full retreat. Walker watched as the mighty Commonwealth fleet fled, leaving behind their damaged command ship and dozens of floating fighters. The Perseverance had done what no human military vessel had managed. It had forced a Commonwealth battle group to retreat. Send a message to Earth Command, Walker ordered. Tell them we found a way to fight back. And tell them to start collecting every broken down, jury-rigged ship they can find. The Commonwealth thinks they can beat us with perfect ships and perfect tactics. He looked around his bridge, at the screens that shifted and changed to show exactly what was needed, at the walls that pulsed with energy that defied understanding, at his crew who had learned to work with chaos instead of fighting it. Let's show them what happens when humanity embraces imperfection. 3 months after their first major victory, the Perseverance wasn't alone anymore. Walker stood on his bridge, watching the radar screen as more ships joined their fleet. But these weren't the sleek military vessels Earth Command wanted to send. They were cargo haulers, mining ships, and ancient colony transports. Ships that, like the Perseverance, had been considered too old or too broken to be useful. 47 ships now, Maria reported, pride in her voice. All of them successfully integrated with versions of our adaptive technology. The screen in front of Walker shifted, showing him close-up views of their fleet. Each ship was different, the adaptive technology affecting them in unique ways. Some had developed living metal hulls that rippled like water. Others had grown organic-looking structures that housed weapons unlike anything the Commonwealth had ever seen. No two ships were alike, and that was their greatest strength. Message from the Rising Star, a comm officer called out. The Rising Star had been a luxury passenger liner before the war. Now its elegant form housed systems that could turn Commonwealth targeting signals back on their own ships. They've spotted a major Commonwealth fleet heading for the Alpha Centauri colonies. At least 100 ships. They're getting desperate, Ben said, looking up from his engineering station. The station itself had evolved, its controls adapting to work perfectly with his particular habits. Ever since we shared our technology with other ships, they haven't won a single major battle. Walker nodded. The Commonwealth's perfect tactics were falling apart in the face of ships that ignored the laws of physics. Their standardized fleets couldn't handle enemies that changed their very nature mid-battle. But Walker knew they wouldn't give up easily. All ships, battle formations, he ordered, then smiled at the irony of those words. Their ships didn't do formations, not really. They'd move like a swarm of strange space creatures, each following its own path while somehow working together in ways that gave Commonwealth tactical computers fits. The Perseverance led their fleet toward Alpha Centauri, its engines humming with power that didn't show up on any sensor readings. The ship had grown stronger over the past months, learning from every encounter. Its hull now looked like flowing metal in some places and pure energy in others. The original adaptive technology had spread throughout every system, turning the once weak cargo hauler into something that defied classification. They found the Commonwealth fleet exactly where intelligence said it would be, moving in perfect formation toward the colonies. But something was different this time. Captain, Maria's voice was tense. "I'm reading new energy signatures from their ships. They've modified their technology." Walker leaned forward, studying the enemy fleet. The Commonwealth ships still moved with mechanical precision, but their hulls had a new look to them. Harder, more angular, with strange devices mounted on their weapons. "They're trying to copy us," Ben said, reading data from his evolved console. "They've analyzed our technology and tried to recreate it, but they're doing it wrong. They're trying to control it, to make it fit their rules." "That's their mistake," Walker smiled. "They still don't understand. The chaos isn't a weapon to be controlled. It's a partner to work with." He opened a channel to their fleet. "All ships, the Commonwealth wants to play our game. Let's show them how it's really done." The battle that followed was like nothing in human or Commonwealth history. The Commonwealth ships fired weapons that twisted through space like the Perseverance's, but their attacks were rigid, programmed, predictable. The human fleet responded with pure chaos, each ship using the adaptive technology in its own unique way. A former mining vessel turned itself into pure energy for 3 seconds, passing through a Commonwealth battleship and leaving the larger vessel's systems corrupted with impossible data. An old planetary shuttle had somehow merged with a small asteroid, using it as both armor and weapon. The rising star danced through enemy fire, its hull splitting into multiple ghost images that all somehow fired real weapons. And the Perseverance led them all, showing what months of true cooperation with the adaptive technology could achieve. Its weapons didn't just bend space. They ignored it completely. Shots fired from its guns existed in multiple places at once, or traveled backward in time to hit ships where they had been moments before. "Commonwealth fleet is breaking formation," Maria reported. "Their new systems are failing. The adaptive technology is rejecting their attempts to control it." Walker watched as the enemy fleet's perfect coordination fell apart. Their copied technology was turning against them, creating chaos they couldn't handle. Ships crashed into each other as their navigation systems tried to plot courses through space that no longer followed normal rules. "Their flagship is changing course," someone called out. "They're trying to retreat." "Not this time," Walker said quietly. The Perseverance had learned something new, something it had been waiting to try. He felt the ship's excitement. There was no other word for it, as it prepared to unleash its latest impossibility. The ship's hull began to glow with energy that hurt to look at. Strange formations grew and shifted across its surface, each one emitting frequencies that made Commonwealth sensors go crazy. Then, with a pulse that rippled through space itself, the Perseverance released its attack. Reality seemed to bend around the Commonwealth fleet. Their ships' perfect formations, their calculated distances, their measured responses, all of it became meaningless as space itself stopped behaving according to their computer's understanding of physics. Ships found themselves overlapping with their own positions from moments ago. Weapons fired at enemies hit nothing because their targets existed in multiple places simultaneously. "What did we just do?" Maria asked, staring at her readings in disbelief. "I think," Ben said slowly, "the ship just weaponized uncertainty itself. It's not just affecting their ships, it's affecting the way their computers understand reality." The Commonwealth fleet was in complete chaos now. Their attempts to copy the adaptive technology had left them vulnerable to its true nature. Ships were powering down, their crews unable to trust any readings or responses from their own systems. Others were firing blindly, their weapons passing through space that might or might not contain their targets. "All ships, target their flagship," Walker ordered. "Let's end this." The human fleet moved as one, not in formation, but in harmony. Each ship attacked in its own way, using its unique evolution of the adaptive technology. The Commonwealth flagship, its perfect systems corrupted by its own failed attempt to control chaos, never had a chance. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. When it was over, the remaining Commonwealth ships fled, leaving behind a battlefield that would puzzle physicists for decades to come. In some places, space itself seemed to have developed permanent quirks, areas where the laws of physics were more suggestions than rules. "Send word to Earth Command," Walker said as their fleet regrouped. "Tell them the Commonwealth's attempt to copy our technology has failed. They tried to turn chaos into order, and it backfired exactly as we thought it would." He looked around his bridge, at the living metal walls that pulsed with energy, at the screens that showed information in ways that somehow made perfect sense, despite defying normal display technologies. The Perseverance had come so far from the broken-down cargo hauler it had once been, and now it had proven that the Commonwealth's greatest strength, their need for perfect control, was actually their greatest weakness. "Where to now, Captain?" Maria asked. Walker smiled. Now we take the fight to them. They thought they could copy our technology without understanding our way of thinking. Let's show them what happens when they try to fight chaos with control." The Perseverance's engines hummed in agreement, its adaptive systems already preparing for the next impossible thing they would achieve together. In trying to copy humanity's chaotic nature, the Commonwealth had only proven why they could never truly understand it, and that understanding would cost them the war. The Commonwealth capital world gleamed like a perfect jewel in space, its cities arranged in precise geometric patterns that could be seen from orbit. Walker stood on the Perseverance's bridge, now barely recognizable as the same ship that had started this war. The walls flowed with living metal and pure energy, screens appeared and disappeared as needed, and the entire ship hummed with power that scientists still couldn't explain. "Their entire home fleet is moving to intercept," Maria reported. Her station had evolved into something that looked more like a floating cloud of data than a traditional console. 500 ships, everything they have left. "And we have 300 of ours," Ben added from his engineering station, which had merged with the ship's systems so completely that he seemed to float in a web of pure information. Every broken down, patched up, impossible ship in human space, all running their own versions of the adaptive technology. Walker nodded, watching as their fleet emerged from jump points that shouldn't have been possible. Old mining ships that now ignored gravity, cargo haulers that could split into multiple copies of themselves, passenger liners that had evolved weapons that fired pure probability. Each one had started as something the Commonwealth considered worthless, and each one had become something wonderful and strange. "Message from the Commonwealth High Command," a comm officer called out. They're asking for our surrender." Walker actually laughed at that. "They still don't understand, do they?" Put them on screen. The main view screen shifted, forming itself from particles of light into a window showing the Commonwealth Supreme Admiral. The alien's perfect uniform and precise posture stood in stark contrast to the organic, flowing bridge of the Perseverance. "This is your final warning," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the same mechanical precision as his ship's. "Your chaotic technology has caused enough damage. Surrender now, and we will help you return to normal space operations under our guidance." "Normal?" Walker smiled. "Admiral, look at your sensors. Really look at what our ships have become. There is no more normal. Your perfect universe of rules and regulations doesn't exist anymore. We've shown the galaxy a better way." "Better." The Admiral's voice rose slightly, the most emotion Walker had ever heard from a Commonwealth officer. "You've infected space itself with your chaos. There are regions where our ships can't go because physics simply doesn't work properly anymore. This has to stop." "No," Walker said quietly. "It has to spread. The universe isn't meant to be controlled, Admiral. It's meant to be experienced, adapted to, worked with. That's what humanity has always understood, and what you never will." He cut the transmission with a wave of his hand. The Commonwealth fleet was moving into attack formation. Perfect lines and angles, every ship exactly where their computers said it should be. It would have been beautiful if it wasn't so predictable. "All ships," Walker called out to their fleet. "The Commonwealth has given us their answer. They choose control over chaos, perfection over adaptation. Let's show them why that's the wrong choice. Every ship, do what you do best. Be unpredictable. Be impossible. Be human. The battle began with a display of physics-defying chaos that would be studied for centuries. Human ships attacked in ways that ignored every rule of space combat. Some vessels phased between different realities, firing weapons that existed in all of them simultaneously. Others created temporary time loops, trapping Commonwealth ships in moments that repeated until their perfect systems crashed. The Perseverance led the charge, now fully evolved into something that was more concept than ship. Its hull shifted between solid metal, pure energy, and states of matter that had no names. Its weapons fired shots that hit their targets before they were fired, or created temporary dimensions where Commonwealth ships found themselves fighting their own reflections. "Their formation is breaking," Maria reported with satisfaction. "Their computers can't handle the contradicting data from all our different ships." She was right. The Commonwealth's perfect fleet was falling into disarray. Their attempts to maintain formation became impossible as space itself seemed to warp and twist around them. Human ships weren't just fighting them. They were changing the very rules of the battlefield. "They're launching their new weapon," Ben warned. "The one they think can counter our technology." Walker watched as the Commonwealth flagship released what looked like a wave of pure order, a field of energy that tried to force reality to behave according to their rules. For a moment, it seemed to work. Human ships near the wave began to lose their impossible abilities, their adaptive technology struggling against the enforced normalcy. But then something wonderful happened. "Captain," Ben called out, excitement in his voice. "The ship, it's doing something new." "They all are." The Perseverance shuddered, its entire form vibrating with energy. Around them, other human ships were doing the same. The adaptive technology that powered them wasn't fighting against the Commonwealth's wave of order. It was absorbing it, learning from it, changing it. Of course, Walker breathed. That's what they never understood. Chaos doesn't fight order. It embraces it, adapts it, transforms it into something new. The wave of order hit their fleet fully, but instead of forcing their ships back to normal, it became part of their chaos. Human vessels began using the Commonwealth's own order as a weapon, creating areas where physics worked so perfectly that their enemies' ships couldn't function. Perfect order, it turned out, was just as impossible as perfect chaos. "Commonwealth fleet is in full retreat," Maria announced. Their flagship is evolving." The Commonwealth's massive flagship was changing, its perfect form twisting as the adaptive technology finally broke through their controls. The ship seemed to be trying to adapt in 1,000 different ways at once, its crew unable to stop the transformation they had fought so hard against. "Open a channel to all Commonwealth ships," Walker ordered. When the channel was ready, he spoke clearly. "This is Captain Walker of the HSS Perseverance. Your flagship is experiencing what happens when you try to control something that's meant to be free. Order and chaos aren't enemies. They're two parts of the same whole. Surrender now, and we'll help you understand that." The Commonwealth fleet hung in space, watching as their flagship continued to change. Finally, the Supreme Admiral's voice came through, sounding tired, and for the first time, uncertain. Perhaps we were wrong. We thought humanity's chaos would destroy the galaxy. Instead, you've shown us a new way to exist within it. We surrender." The war ended not with a final battle, but with a transformation. The Commonwealth learned to accept that their perfect order wasn't the only way. Human ships, led by the Perseverance, began teaching them how to work with the adaptive technology instead of trying to control it. Walker stood on his bridge one last time, preparing to meet with the Commonwealth leadership. His ship had changed so much from the broken-down cargo hauler it had once been, but in many ways, it was still the same. It still solved problems in unexpected ways. It still survived against impossible odds. It was still perfectly imperfect. "You know," he said to his crew, "they called us the weakest ship in the galaxy once. Said we weren't worth scrapping. Shows what they know." Ben grinned, his station rippling with agreeing lights. "No," Walker smiled. "They were right. We were weak. But they never understood that being weak being broken, being imperfect. That's what made us strong. Because when you're not perfect, you learn to adapt. And adaptation is the greatest strength of all. The Perseverance hummed around them, its systems pulsing with energy that defied understanding but felt somehow right. It had started as the galaxy's weakest ship and become its greatest nightmare, not through strength or power, but through the very imperfection the Commonwealth had despised. And in doing so, it had taught the galaxy that sometimes the greatest victories come not from being the strongest, but from being strong enough to embrace your weaknesses and turn them into something wonderful and new.